Hi folks, Kevin here. It's July 9th, 2014, and it's time I give you a little bit of an update on what's going on with the hives. As I've mentioned in the past, I'm using Warre hives, those hives you can see over my shoulder in the back. Warre are just a top frame type of hive, a little bit smaller than the Langstrong hives. And I've been using them since I started 3 years ago. 3 years ago I started with 2 nukes that I purchased from someone who supplies bees for Langstrong's hive users, and I adapted them to fit the top of my Warre hives. And the first year, last year when I came through the spring, I lost one of the hives, and the other hive wasn't as great. And I did have hive beetles in there, and I had mice that had gotten into both of them. So I made a different entrance for all the hives as well. I advertised on Craigslist for capturing swarms, and I ended up doing some cutouts. And last year I got up to, well, 8 hives, but one of my hives absconded shortly after I brought it home. And the cutouts that I did were later in the season, so they were in August and September. The hives really didn't get a chance to really build up very well. I had 2 hives that had a significant amount of honey stores for the winter, and I don't treat. I don't do typical hive inspections like most people do, and I'll mention how I do my inspections in just a moment. But no treatments, no feeding, no sugar water or anything, no essential oils, nothing. And so I went into the winter with 7 hives, 2 of which were pretty strong hives, but the rest were pretty weak hives. One of the hives survived the winter. There were still ample honey in the other hive that did not survive. Both of those were from cutouts, and those were the 2 earliest ones in August that I did do last year. The one that survived and the one that still had a significant amount of honey in it. And I guess most people would say the bees were robbing. I consider them foraging or scavenging. I wouldn't say robbing. I let them have the honey, all the bees that were either the feral bees in the area or the bees coming from my other hive that did survive. And that hive was pretty weak. There were no mice, no moths, no hive beetles, and there wasn't evidence of tracheal mites as well. So I was pretty disappointed that my hive numbers really went down over the winter, but this last winter, and I'm in Oswego, New York, near Lake Ontario, we had the longest, roughest, toughest winter that I could remember. I didn't see a bee fly for almost, over 10 weeks. Not a bee was seen out of the hives. It was that cold. So it was just really tough on them, and I don't think I had the population of bees that were necessary to survive the winter. I do like doing the cutouts because I'm able to get bees who have survived winters in these structures. Now this year, like I said, I started off with the 1 hive that was pretty weak. And I didn't tear the hive apart. Now how I do my inspections, so each one of these, I'm going to go over to the hive for just a moment. So each one of these hives has windows in the back of them. So I can look through here, and that gives me some information. So this is one of the cutouts I did, and you can see where I don't know if you can see in there. But you can see some rubber bands that I had attached some of the brood comb in the hive. And you can see the hive doing okay at this point. This is a small number of bees, but this hive has already swarmed. And I'll go over how things worked out. So right now, the other thing is, so each box has windows so I can see the activity of what's actually going on in each hive. So here we've got a queen cell down here right now developing. We got some drones, we got brood comb here. Bees are pretty active. The queen's pretty darn busy in this hive. This is one of the hives that I actually did a split on. So the first cutout, I'll go over that in just a moment. But you can see we can look in each one of the hive boxes and see what's there. And that gives me, excuse me while I turn the camera on, that gives me a fair amount of information, but ausculting or listening with a stethoscope is really provided me with a whole different gambit of information of what's actually going on in the hives. Now the stethoscope I use is a digital stethoscope, and it has quite a range. The one that I use have had for quite a few years. It was the first model that Welsh Allen came out with, and I actually have a teaching set, so I can record the digital sounds as well. And I just have to get to that point where I've got the time to start recording some of these sounds, because there's besides all of the wing type sounds and the different tones of buzzing and the frequencies, there's also scratching sounds that can tell you, and I hear these increased scratching sounds just before they're about to swarm. But anyways, so using the stethoscope and using the windows are the way for me to evaluate them, and I'm trying to do things as naturally as possible. And I just think doing the standard hive inspections, we're changing the whole dynamics in their home. It's sort of like, you know, someone coming into your home, taking you all out at the middle of the night or whenever you're not ready for it, going outside, getting a, you know, it's like going through TSA at the airport, and it just happens at someone else's whim. We affect the pheromone concentrations in a hive when we do it. We certainly affect the amount of light that gets exposed in there. So, you know, I'm not sure that some of the quote current wisdom, the information that's available by most beekeepers and by those who are teaching beekeeping, is necessarily accurate information. And I'm trying to gather as much information without becoming too biased, and I've created some hypotheses which I'll share in the future. But this is my approach. I'm not taking the hive apart. I've seen 2 to 3 queens in the same hive. I've seen them actually crawl over each other without any menacing type aggressive behavior. So I'm not sure that we know all the information that's really going on in the hive, given our mannerisms, our approaches to trying to learn about what's going on in a colony like this. But anyways, so this season, last month, I got my first call for a cutout, and it was in a porch, in the ceiling of a porch. Did the cutout. Everything went well. That hive had already swarmed. I brought that hive home, set it up here, and 2 weeks later I did a split with the hive. So I created 2 hives. I figured it was early enough in the season, and it was actually 16 days after I brought it home, because I could still see some eggs in cells in some of the brood comb, and indeed they produced a queen from that, and both of those hives have done fairly well. I got my second call for a cutout, which ended up not being any viable bees. It was a house that was built in the 1800s, used as part of the Underground Railroad. It was in the porch, a 14-foot tall porch roof. It had queens extracted last year, and the person who came and took charge of the cutout, actually left some comb there, some honey there, and sprayed the rest of the bees. Rodents moved in, and the owner saw some bees at the entrance, and I think they were just scavenging some of the honey that was left there and some of the comb in a different part of the porch, and assumed they were there. I didn't see much bee activity, just a couple of bees, and I took the whole area apart, and he needs to do quite a bit of remodeling, and I think some of it's from the rodents, that some of the damage was from the rodents that had moved in since last year. So that was not productive, that cutout. Then I got a call about a cutout not too far from here, from Fairhaven, New York, and it was another 1800s house with balloon frame walls. It was in a wall, asbestos siding on the outside, second floor, so we went in through the plastered lath board, and again, that hive had already had a significant swarm, so the population size was down, but we did a cutout. There was plenty of brood comb. I took some of that brood comb, I put it in the hive that survived and was a little bit weak. And that one has turned around and done quite well since that point. That hive did quite well, and by word of mouth he contacted one of his friends, and I did a cutout the very next week. This is a couple of weeks ago, and that hive hadn't swarmed yet, so there were I believe a couple of queens inside of that hive when I got to it. Lots of drones. It was very, very active. I got it on a rainy day just before a big storm, and I established another hive. Last week I had one swarm leave the hives, and from watching how the swarms actually gather, a lot of the times we'll see them gathering on the face of the we'll either see bearding, or we can see them gather on the face of the hive near the entrance, and I could see the activity going on, and these were the three hives that were doing quite well. The very first one that I brought home, that I had done splits on, that one is actually the bigger, with a greater volume of bees from the split. That one was looking like it was going to swarm. So it did swarm, and it ended up, the swarm was right here in this magnolia tree. Now all of these hive boxes are facing south, and it's in part of the food forest area. So there's blueberry bushes, there's apple trees, apricots, pears, raspberry bushes, currants, gooseberries, what else? Josta berries, peach trees, pear trees, plum trees. It's a permaculture food forest that's all mulch material, and they're all around. A lot of the pears and all, and there are some hazelnuts. There's a whole variety of different companion species here as well, so that there's garlic, horseradish, onions. All of these things are around. But anyways, that first hive went ahead and did a small swarm in that magnolia tree. I had made a bee vac. I came over, extracted that small, a little bit smaller than a softball size hive, and that's where this colony got started. I had some brood comb from the last hive that I had extracted, and I had the brood comb in here all set for them, and then when I put the bees in there. The very next day, another swarm about the same size in this magnolia tree again, and that's how I set up this hive as well, to establish a colony in there. And these are both very small, just the size of a softball. This is all last week. Now both swarms came from this hive box, and from that colony. However, I could see a great deal of activity coming from this hive, and this was the second cutout. I'm sorry, Yes, this was the second cutout that I had done that was successful. And they were at first just bearding up and over the front ledge there of the platform that I've got these hive boxes on. And yesterday morning I was over doing some construction in the greenhouse, and I decided to come over here early in the morning, and lo and behold, there was quite a hive, quite a swarm in this, the largest swarm. And that's something. Let me just turn this for a second. Oh, dang it. That's something I just wanted to mention. Twice, the largest swarms that I've seen have been early in the morning, and this is central New York, and it has been warm. This is July, but most of my swarms that I see are in the afternoons. And both times that I've seen large swarms, and I've caught them right out here in front, have been just before one heck of a storm. And yesterday afternoon we had a storm come through, trees down, power lines out all over the northeast area here, and that was the largest swarm. And that's just an observation. I know in the Farmer's Almanac it says bees won't swarm when there's bad weather, but certainly when there's been hurricanes, other natural disasters, bees have been known to leave their hives during that time, and then the hives become repopulated, whether they're in trees or in buildings, after, it can be 2 months after the storm. Now, who knows if it's the same colony, but certainly they're aware of whether it's barometric pressure, wind speeds, changes in temperature. I don't know what it is that's going on, but that's one observation that seems intriguing, that the largest swarms early in the morning, those we may look for those on the days when we're expecting inclement weather, a significant storm to come through. But anyways, I think that's enough of a hive update. So right now I've got 8 hives started. That large swarm I gathered, sorry, and it's down there in this hive box here. I don't have all the top frames in there because this one I didn't use the bee vac with, because it was just clogging up and decreasing the suction power of the vac that I made. So I got to modify that so I can make it get a little bit more power. So I ended up taking one of my 3 hive box tall, taking out all the top frames for 2 of them to be able to get the colony down in there and get the queen in. So I've got to take that apart. Probably they're doing quite a bit of chaining in there right now. Take that apart in the next day or 2 and put the rest of the top bars across in there so that they don't extend their comb all the way down. Oh, that's one other thing that I'll mention as well, the comb. Because we're gathering medicinal plants from all over the property, yarrow, plantain, milk thistle, gosh, I can't think of all the ones right now, but all of red clover, and we make our own salves and ointments. It's really important to me that I get as little contamination, and even if I weren't using pesticides, and I'm not, the bees, I can't absolutely control where they're foraging, and certainly this site has bountiful supply of flowering species. They will venture off our property and go to our neighbors, which monoculture, GMO, pesticides, fertilizers, lime, all of those things are being used. And the wax with the foundations that are used certainly is lipophilic, so all of these whether it's hydrocarbons due to incomplete combustion of automobiles, or it's the pesticides that are adhering to the waxy material of the comb, that's being concentrated in, whether we're making our products for application on ourselves or possibly for selling in the future. I really want to minimize the chances of contamination. So the comb that they draw the comb, and my main goal isn't producing queens or pollinating other places, and it certainly isn't for producing a bountiful supply of honey. My goal is to learn as much as I can about the bee colonies as I possibly can with as least intrusive a manner, and see if we can capture feral colonies and raise them in such a way that they're going to be successful. Now, I certainly have to modify my housing here, and I have plans. I've designed an enclosure to try and help with some of the high winds and the severe prolonged cold periods here. But I'm trying to be as least intrusive and be as natural as possible. So that's it. Oh, I'll show you one more thing. There's one of the, I don't know if I'm trying to do this with the camera. There's one of the swarm traps that's baited with some brood comb and lemongrass inside of there, but seems like they want to go to the trees every single time, right in front of the hive here. They do go to the ginkgos from time to time, the swarms. I've caught them there last year. And so that's it. That's my hive update on the site. I hope I'd be interested in anyone's feedback who's working with bees, who's interested in doing things naturally. I'd like to converse with anyone out there who's interested in the same sort of path. I'm just not as interested in the standard dogma that's being practiced with beekeeping. I certainly wish them well. It's just not how I want to approach things. Well, anyways, thanks so much and have a great day. Bye-bye now.